Justice Nathaniel Carter was a man who had spent his life upholding the law. As a Supreme Court judge, he had ruled on cases that shaped the country's legal landscape, dismantled corruption, and ensured that no one was above the law. But when he moved into Oakwood Estates, a quiet, upscale neighborhood, he never expected to find his most ridiculous legal battle yet. And at the center of it, Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. Nathan had chosen this house for a reason. It wasn't a mansion, nor was it a gated estate, just a modest, well-maintained home where he could relax in peace. But there was one thing about it that stood out. His garage. See, Nathan was an avid car collector. His garage was state-of-the-art, holding everything from a 1969 Mustang Fastback to a Tesla Roadster. It was his pride and joy, a place where he could escape the stress of courtrooms and legal battles. But Karen had other ideas. The first confrontation. It started with a knock on the door. Nathan opened it to find Karen standing there, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, with the unmistakable air of self-importance. "Judge Carter," she said with a tight smile, "we need to discuss your garage." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" Karen pursed her lips. "Your garage door has been open for too long on multiple occasions. HOA regulations require it to be closed within 5 minutes after a vehicle enters or exits." Nathan blinked. 5 minutes. "Yes," Karen continued, nodding matter-of-factly. "We can't allow properties to look cluttered. Your cars may be disturbing the aesthetic harmony of the community." Nathan chuckled. "Karen, do you know how many lawsuits have been filed over HOAs trying to enforce ridiculous, unenforceable rules?" Karen's eye twitched. "HOA rules are legally binding, sir. You agreed to them when you moved here." Nathan smirked. "Karen, I know the actual law. You don't have a legal leg to stand on." Karen huffed. "We'll see about that." She turned on her heel and marched away. Nathan shook his head, laughing to himself. He had no idea just how far Karen was willing to go. HOA's first power move. Nathan figured Karen would just issue a sternly worded letter and move on. He was wrong. Instead of backing down, she escalated, fast. The first fine arrives. Nathan stepped onto his porch the next morning to find an envelope taped to his front door. He pulled it off and opened it. Notice of violation. Infraction number 1. Garage door open beyond HOA time limit. $500 fine. Infraction number 2. Unauthorized vehicle storage. $750 fine. Infraction number 3. Failure to maintain community standards. $1,250 fine. Nathan laughed. "She actually thinks I'm going to pay this?" As he stood there, a shadow fell over him. "Morning, Judge Carter." He turned to see Karen, arms crossed, smug as ever. "I trust you've received your notice," she said sweetly. Nathan tilted his head. "Karen, do you know what makes a fine legally enforceable?" Karen's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" Nathan held up the letter. This is garbage. You can't issue fines without proper legal backing. And you definitely can't charge me for having a garage." Karen lifted her chin. "HOA regulations are binding contracts. If you refuse to comply, there will be consequences." Nathan smiled. "Oh, Karen, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Karen calls in the authorities." Nathan assumed that was the end of it. He was wrong. 2 days later, he was working in his garage when he heard voices outside. He stepped out to find a city inspector standing next to Karen. Nathan sighed. "Let me guess. You filed a complaint." Karen beamed. "Yes. We've received reports that your garage structure is in violation of HOA and city zoning regulations." The inspector cleared his throat. "Sir, we're required to investigate any zoning complaints made by an HOA." Nathan smirked. "Of course. Feel free to inspect away." Karen's smug look grew. Until the inspector finished his review. He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, there's no violation here. His garage is fully permitted and compliant with city codes." Karen's face twisted. "That can't be right." Nathan leaned in. "Karen, I've written Supreme Court rulings on property rights. Did you really think you could win this?" Karen's face burned red. "This isn't over." Nathan chuckled. "Oh, Karen, it's just getting started." Because now, he was done playing nice. He HOA escalates the conflict. Karen had been publicly humiliated in front of the city inspector, but instead of backing off, she doubled down. And this time, she made a huge mistake. The fake legal threat. 2 days after the inspector shut her down, Nathan received another official-looking envelope in his mailbox. He opened it and laughed out loud. Notice of legal action. Due to repeated HOA violations, failure to comply with community standards, and disregard for neighborhood harmony, the Oakwood Estates HOA is prepared to take legal action to remove you from the community. You are hereby given a final warning before a lawsuit is filed. Nathan shook his head. A fake lawsuit threat? She was getting desperate. That's when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. This is Judge Carter. A hesitant voice came through the line. Your Honor, this is Daniel Reynolds. I'm a board member for the HOA. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What can I do for you, Daniel? Daniel cleared his throat. Look, I just wanted to say that I had nothing to do with that legal letter. Karen drafted it herself. Some of us are starting to feel like she's going too far. Nathan smirked. The cracks were forming. Smart of you to call me, Daniel, he said. Because what she just did, that's illegal. You can't fabricate legal threats without a real case. That's fraud, intimidation, and possibly mail fraud if she used HOA funds to send it. Silence. Then Daniel muttered, Oh crap. Nathan chuckled. Exactly. So here's what's going to happen, Daniel. I'm going to give Karen one last chance to back off. If she doesn't, Daniel swallowed. What happens then? Nathan smiled. Then I bury her in legal action so deep, she'll be digging out for years. Karen tries to go bigger, and fails spectacularly. Instead of backing down, Karen did something even dumber. She called 911 on Nathan's garage. Nathan was in his living room when he heard sirens outside. He stepped onto his porch to find a police cruiser parked in his driveway. 2 officers were standing with Karen, who looked smug as ever. Nathan exhaled. Oh, for the love of. One of the officers approached. Sir, we received a report about an unpermitted commercial structure on your property. Your HOA president claims that you're running an illegal business from your garage. Nathan tilted his head. Did she now? Karen folded her arms. It's clearly being used as a commercial workspace. HOA rules strictly forbid running businesses out of residential homes. Nathan chuckled. Officers, would you like to see my garage? They exchanged glances. Sure. Nathan led them inside. The officers looked around. No desks. No employees. Just a car collection. One of the officers sighed and turned to Karen. Ma'am, this is not a business. It's a private garage. Karen's smug look cracked. But he's clearly using it. Ma'am, the officer interrupted, rubbing his temples. You just wasted police resources for a non-crime. Nathan smiled. Here it comes. Do you know what happens when someone calls 911 under false pretenses? Karen blanched. Nathan turned to the officers. I'd like to formally request a report be filed on this incident. This is an abuse of emergency services. The officers nodded. We can do that, sir. Karen looked like she was about to faint. Nathan patted her on the shoulder. Karen, you should really know better than to lie to the police. Karen stormed off, red-faced. And Nathan, he was just getting started. The HOA oversteps and the protagonist strikes back. Karen had officially crossed the line. She had wasted police resources with a false 911 call, issued fraudulent fines, and sent a fake legal threat. Nathan had been patient. But now it was his turn to play offense. Karen tries one more dirty move. The next morning, Nathan woke up to construction noise outside. He pulled on his robe, stepped onto his porch, and froze. A group of contractors were ripping up his driveway. Nathan's blood boiled. He stormed toward the workers. Excuse me, what the hell are you doing? One of the workers looked up, confused. We got an order from the HOA to dig up this driveway for noncompliance. Apparently, it violates community paving standards. Nathan's jaw tightened. Oh, Karen, now you're really screwed. And then, she appeared. Karen stood at the edge of his property, arms folded, smug as ever. Judge Carter, she said, her voice using fake politeness, it has come to our attention that your driveway exceeds HOA width restrictions. We are simply enforcing the community rules. Nathan stared at her. Karen, I designed this driveway to be ADA compliant. The width meets federal accessibility standards. If you remove it, you are violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. Karen blinked. Nathan continued. So, do you want to explain to a federal judge why you're trying to destroy an accessibility-compliant driveway? Karen's face paled. I was just. Nathan pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of the workers. Let me make this clear, he said. If any of you so much as move another brick, I will personally ensure that this entire HOA faces a civil rights lawsuit for ADA violations. The workers dropped their tools immediately. Yeah, we're not getting involved in that, one of them muttered. Karen looked like she wanted to vanish. Nathan smiled. That's what I thought. The contractors packed up and left. Karen stormed away, humiliated. And Nathan? He was about to drop the hammer. Nathan publicly exposes Karen. That evening, Nathan filed a formal complaint with heavy checkmark the city's zoning office for HOA overreach. Heavy checkmark the ADA Compliance Board for discrimination. Heavy checkmark the State Bar Association for Karen's fake legal threats. Then, he called the local news. The story goes viral. The next morning, Karen woke up to her worst nightmare. Police Scarlight breaking news. Local HOA president under investigation for fraud and harassment. Police Scarlight. Nathan sipped his coffee, watching the segment. Karen's face was plastered on the screen, along with Small Blue Diamond, her fake legal threat. Small Blue Diamond, the 911 call abuse. Small Blue Diamond, the ADA driveway incident. The news exposed everything. Neighbors were furious. The HOA board was panicking. And Karen was about to lose everything. Karen's final, desperate move. Karen was backed into a corner. Her fake fines had been exposed. Her 911 stunt was public knowledge. And now, the news had turned her into a national joke. But instead of accepting defeat, she tried one last move. And this time, she sealed her fate. The break-in. Nathan had just finished dinner when his security system pinged. Red circle motion detected, garage entrance. He pulled up the live feed, and his jaw clenched. Karen, dressed in dark clothing, messing with his garage lock. Nathan chuckled. She was trying to break in. With a single tap, he activated the floodlights. Karen froze like a deer in headlights. Nathan stepped outside, arms crossed. Karen, are you seriously breaking into my garage? Karen stammered. I was just. Nathan held up his phone screen. Security footage recording. Smile, he said. This is all being recorded. Karen's face turned white. You know what happens now, right? Nathan continued. This is breaking and entering. That's a felony. Karen took a step back. Wait, let's be reasonable. Nathan dialed 911. The arrest. 15 minutes later. Police Scarlight red and blue lights filled the street. Police Scarlight. Karen stood on the sidewalk, handcuffed, looking completely broken. The officer turned to Nathan. Mr. Carter, would you like to press charges? Nathan smirked. Oh, absolutely. Karen screeched. You can't do this. Nathan leaned in. Karen, I've been letting you off the hook for weeks. But this, he gestured to his garage cameras. This is beyond HOA nonsense. This is criminal. Karen collapsed onto the curb, sobbing. Nathan, he simply watched as they put her in the squad car. Because Karen was finished. HOA crumbles and Karen's downfall. Karen was gone, hauled off in a police cruiser, facing felony charges. But Nathan wasn't finished yet. Because Karen was just the start. It was time to bury the HOA for good. The HOA faces the fallout. With Karen behind bars, the remaining HOA board members tried to distance themselves from her. At the next emergency HOA meeting, Nathan sat in the front row, arms crossed, watching them squirm. Linda, the HOA vice president, cleared her throat. Obviously, given the recent events, we'd like to remind everyone that Karen was acting alone. Nathan smirked. Oh, really? He stood up, holding a folder full of evidence. Because I have emails, financial records, and signed HOA orders that prove Karen wasn't acting alone. This entire board enabled her. The room murmured. Linda's face paled. Well, we were just following policy. Nathan flipped to a specific document. This is a report from the state auditor, proving that HOA funds were misused for fraudulent fines. Gasps rippled through the room. One of the board members stood up. Wait, what? Nathan grinned. Oh, you didn't know? Yeah. The city is fining the HOA for illegal enforcement. And guess what? Homeowners are filing a class action lawsuit. The board panicked. How much is the fine? One of them asked. Nathan folded his arms. Try $250,000. Someone fainted. The HOA officially dies. Linda slammed her gavel down. We need to take a vote. Nathan leaned forward. Dissolve the HOA and you walk away. Try to fight it. He smirked. You'll be in court for years. The board members looked at each other. Then, One by one, hands went up. Linda sighed. The HOA is officially dissolved. The room erupted into cheers. Nathan leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Karen was gone. The HOA was dead. And the neighborhood? It was finally free. The HOA faces full legal consequences. With the HOA dissolved, the remaining board members scrambled to save themselves. But Nathan? Nathan made sure they paid for their crimes. The class action lawsuit. Within weeks, homeowners, led by Nathan's legal team, filed a class action lawsuit against the former HOA board. The charges? Heavy checkmark fraudulent fines. Heavy checkmark illegal enforcement actions. Heavy checkmark misuse of HOA funds. And guess what? Heavy checkmark the city backed the case. Turns out, the HOA had illegally collected over $200,000 in fines. Money that mysteriously disappeared into miscellaneous fees. With Karen already in jail, the remaining board members panicked. At the final court hearing, the judge didn't hold back. The court ruling. Nathan sat in the front row as the verdict was delivered. The judge glanced over the nervous ex-HOA board members. The court finds that the Oakwood Estates HOA engaged in fraudulent practices, and all illegally collected funds must be returned to the homeowners. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The judge wasn't done. Furthermore, he continued, the board members involved in financial misconduct will face individual fines and possible criminal charges. Nathan smirked. Heavy checkmark, the HOA was bankrupt. Heavy checkmark, the board members were financially ruined. Heavy checkmark, Karen's felony case was moving forward. It was game over. Nathan's final power move. After the ruling, one of the ex-board members approached Nathan, looking defeated. Listen, he muttered. We know you hated Karen, but this lawsuit is going to ruin us. Nathan took a slow sip of coffee. Good. The man swallowed. Is there anything we can do? Nathan smiled. Actually, there is. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a business card. I just acquired a law office downtown, he said. They need paralegals. The man's face fell. Nathan smirked. Let me know if you're interested. Then, he walked away. Because this was justice. Karen's personal downfall. With the HOA destroyed and the lawsuit settled, Nathan figured Karen would try to disappear. But fate had other plans. Karen's new life. A few months later, Nathan was grabbing coffee at a downtown cafe when he overheard a conversation at the next table. You hear about that HOA lady from the news? Nathan's ears perked up. Yeah, the other person scoffed. She got out of jail, but she's broke. Had to take some minimum wage job just to survive. Nathan grinned. Then later that day, he found out where she was working. Nathan runs into Karen. Nathan was walking through one of his newly acquired properties, a luxury office complex, when he spotted a familiar figure. Karen, wearing a cheap name tag. Her new job? A receptionist. At a law firm Nathan owned. Nathan grinned. Karen, he said, barely containing his laughter. What a surprise. Karen's face turned red. What are you doing here? Nathan smirked. I own this building. Karen's eye twitched. No, you don't. Nathan pulled out his phone and flashed the property deed. Karen's jaw dropped. You work for me now. She looked like she was about to faint. Nathan chuckled. Well, Karen, I hope you enjoy enforcing office policies. I hear clipboard duty is a real thrill. And with that, Nathan walked away, leaving Karen trapped in her own personal nightmare. Epilogue and final mic drop. With Karen working a low-level job, the HOA dead, and the neighborhood free, Nathan had won. And damn, it felt good. The neighborhood after Karen. Without the HOA's ridiculous rules, the community thrived. Heavy checkmark, no more petty fines. Heavy checkmark, no more fake violations. Heavy checkmark, no more clipboard patrols. For the first time in years, people actually enjoyed their homes. At the next neighborhood barbecue, Nathan's neighbor, Mr. Thompson, walked over with a grin. Hey, Judge Carter, he said, handing him a piece of paper. Nathan unfolded it and laughed. Notice of violation. Infraction. Excessive enjoyment of one's own property. Nathan snorted. You really made a fake HOA violation? Thompson smirked. Souvenir. Nathan shook his head, crumpling the paper. I'll frame it. He leaned back in his chair, sipping a whiskey, watching his peaceful, drama-free neighborhood. Karen was gone. The HOA was dead. And this was exactly how it should have been all along. With a final, satisfied smirk, Nathan muttered, They really tried.